Good afternoon, viewers. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we start, I would like to request all the participants to please turn off your microphones. Thank you.
Sure.
So today is 3rd April 2023 and 12th Ramadan 1444. I am Samra Qureshi, International Relations Specialist at the Islamic Chamber of Commerce as a moderator for today's session. I welcome you all to the first session of ICCIA and International Voices webinar. As the largest representative of the private sector, ICCIA is working to build the knowledge of its beneficiaries by bringing programs, activities, and content that serve to grow the private sector in general and the intra-OIC trade more specifically. Hence, this series of the webinar aims to highlight the available financial and technical resources which are being offered by international organizations such as UN agencies, OIC organs, and development funds. The theme of our first session is enabling economic growth. Economic growth refers to an increase in a country's output of goods and services. It is commonly measured in terms of the increase in the market value of additional goods and services produced using the estimates such as GDP. It was seen for the most important sector, tourism economy. And to cover these, we have with us speakers from prestigious international organizations working tirelessly to develop the highlighted sectors. I welcome on board Mr. Jem Tintin, Senior Researcher at CESRIC. CESRIC is a subsidiary organ of OIC. It acts as a major research arm of the OIC, whereby it is assigned the task of preparing the main documents, preparing the main economic and social reports and background documents for the multitude of economic, social, and technical cooperation meetings and conferences under the umbrella of OIC. Moreover, we have on board Regional Director for Asia and Pacific at the International Telecommunication Union. The ITU is the United Nations Special Technology. It is mandated to facilitate international connectivity and develop the technical standards that ensure technologies seamlessly interconnect and strive to improve access to ICTs in underserved communities worldwide. Lastly, but not the least, we have Mr. Badi Alzada, Director of Events and Management from ICCIA. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let us now quickly move to our first segment, ways to mitigate post-lockdown effects on tourism industry. For the last 2 decades, international tourism has been realized as one of the main economic activities and an important source of economic growth through foreign exchange earnings, FDI, and employment. There is an increasing consensus on the importance of tourism as a strategic sector in the national economy, insofar it provides an essential contribution to the economic well-being. To unfold the opportunities in the tourism sector, I would like to direct my questions to Mr. Jem Tintin. Good afternoon, Mr. Tintin. How are you?
I'm very good, Ms. Samra. How are you?
I'm good, Alhamdulillah. I'm glad for you to join us today. And let's start with the set of questions. Now, are we ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Director, we would like to start off with what are the prominent opportunities within the tourism industry that enables economic growth?
Yes, as you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the tourism industry severely, not only in the OIC region, but also across the globe. Both in developed countries and developing countries, it has resulted in some negative impacts. In fact, if we measure its impact in the OIC, specifically the member states of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, we calculated that the OIC countries hosted 208 million fewer international tourists during the COVID-19, especially in 2020, and 8.6 million jobs lost due to the COVID-19. And the estimated loss in the GDP of the OIC countries was around 293 billion USD dollars. So given this picture, in fact, there are some new emergent trends which also helps the member states of the OIC to recover, because every crisis comes with some opportunities. So therefore, there are some trends and some opportunities which could, in fact, enable the growth in the tourism industry as well as in the overall economy of the OIC countries. Some of them are as follows. The first one is, I think, the digitalization. Because of the pandemic and the new rules and some new regulations implemented by the countries, in fact, digitalization is now a must in many steps of the tourism sector related operations. So this is one opportunity that could, in fact, accelerate the transformation in the sector. Second thing is that now there is a rise in some new tourism experiences, like the rise in the share of solo travelers with the start of the pandemic, or instead of mass groups, now people prefer small groups. So this is another opportunity for new types of tourism, which also could accelerate the economic growth. And another let's say opportunity is the rise of some niche tourism segments, like health tourism, like ecotourism, are now very much popular in many countries and destinations. Before the pandemic, which were, let's say, limitedly known, but now because of the pandemic, such as people would like to spend more time in the nature, therefore now the ecotourism destinations have become more popular. And also now we have also another transformation in the sector, which is the rise of the domestic tourism. During the pandemic, as you know, the countries closed their borders and implemented some measures to contain the spread of the virus. And during these times, people, directed to go to domestic destinations. Now people are fully aware of the available opportunities in their countries. And now after the pandemic, I think nowadays it has become much more popular, which will also drive the growth in the tourism sector and in the economy in general. So these are some of the highlights that I wanted to share with you at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for highlighting the impact of tourism specifically in the OIC region, and also the change of norms that come across after the COVID-19 pandemic. And this, having that been talked, this brings me to the second question. What effective capacity building measures have been taken by CICCIA to develop the tourism industry?
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. As you mentioned at the introduction part, CICCIA is a subsidiary organ of the OIC based in Ankara. We are providing three types of services to the member states of the OIC. Number one is the statistics. We collect statistics and report them in our OIC stat database, which we provide statistics and new information about their social and economic progress, including we have a specific dimension in our database, one data set about tourism indicators of the OIC. So with this, we provide some information for the policymakers, researchers, academicians to give more informed decisions. Secondly, we also publish our report, which is another mandate area of CICCIA, which is the research. In the area of research, we publish our annual report on tourism, which is titled International Tourism in the OIC countries. The most recent edition was published last year in 2022. And in this report, we provide a comprehensive picture of the OIC countries, how the OIC countries performing in the domain of tourism, what are the main challenges, what are the new trends, etc. So in fact, most of the questions that you are asking are available in details in our report. So for any interested audience, they can check our report, which is available free of charge on our website, www.cesric.org. It is available in the official languages of the OIC that they can download and read the details. And also, when it comes to the third area of CESRIC, which we have a mandate, which is capacity building. We provide capacity building activities and training activities for the officials of the member states in different domains, including tourism. In the area of tourism, we organize several webinars, training courses, and also capacity building programs for the ministries of tourism, ministries of health during the pandemic, because there were some new developments, new health protocols, so how to start the tourism activities. So therefore, we organized several activities. Just to give you an idea, for instance, in 2022, we organized one training course on tourism and hospitality services in March 2022. And another one is also we provided a training course which is titled Training of Trainers on the topic of tourism and hospitality services in April 2021. And finally, we also try to draw the attention of the policymakers and practitioners to the topic of Muslim-friendly tourism or halal tourism, which is a niche market in the OIC. We also provide training courses on this topic as well. In March 2021, for instance, we organized a training course on halal tourism and Muslim-friendly hospitality services. So this is my take on this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for highlighting the available reports and the training programs by CESRIC, and I hope our beneficiaries and the people who are watching will take benefit from these opportunities that are there, that are provided by CESRIC. Having talked about the beneficiaries specifically in the OIC region, if we can specify some of the successful policies that are implemented through the OIC platforms for the OIC countries to develop the tourism industry as a whole.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. In fact, in our report, we also highlighted some best practices and some successful examples from the OIC region, how OIC countries came up with solutions, developed new policies to as a response to the pandemic and to accelerate the growth and to support the recovery activities. In fact, these activities are like in Azerbaijan started the Sahman program, Palestine initiated Palestine Tourism Recovery Task Force, Turkey initiated Safe Tourism Certification Program, etc. So all these details are available in our report. But although, in addition to that, the OIC and its institutions also took some actions and started some programs to support the recovery activities in the domain of tourism, like the Islamic Conference of Tourism Ministers, ICCIA, which was held last year in Baku, Azerbaijan, which is the highest level forum of the OIC, discussed the impacts of the COVID-19 on tourism industry and also adopted a series of resolutions to guide member states how to address the new challenges stemming from the pandemic. In addition to that, the COMSEC Private Sector Tourism Forum, which is being organized annually, also discusses some contemporary issues and to support member states to diversify their tourism activities and products and services. Last year, for instance, they discussed about the role of gastronomy tourism, how it can play an important role to support the growth in the tourism industry. The COMSEC also organizes working group meetings every 6 months, and they discuss in details different topics, including the COVID-19 pandemic, and also they provide project funding mechanism to support the soft projects of the member states in the domain of tourism. And finally, as you know, CESIC, ICBT, ICCIA, the relevant institutions of the OIC organize various training programs, capacity building programs, and webinar programs as we have today. So these are some of the activities of the OIC, just as a quick brief. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for highlighting the platforms in the OIC region. And definitely, I would like to also endorse the project funding of the ComSec. It is a really good platform for people to avail. Um, as representative of private sector, and it is really important to um, highlight the sector to this highlight the private sector and be very specific to it. So my question is to you, and it's the last question for you. What initiatives and opportunities are available for the OIC private sector in like specifically in OIC?
Okay, thank you for this question. It is very important question. In fact, you know, the tourism activity at the end of the day is the activity of the private sector. The government or public institutions can just level the field for the activities of the private sector. So therefore, the private sector is the backbone of the tourism activities, and therefore the question is very relevant and important one. So let us focus on some opportunities for the private sector in the domain of tourism. In fact, even before the beginning of the pandemic, there was a huge need of infrastructure investments in the OIC region. Just during the pandemic, we realized it better that there is some immense need in the infrastructure investments, like physical investments, but also we also need investment in the IT sector as well. So this is in fact an opportunity for the private sector, because if we need more investment, which is also a business opportunity for the for the private sector. Another thing is that I would like to mention is that, as I just mentioned in previous question, there are some new emerging trends or new tourism concepts like mother-friendly tourism, ecotourism. So all these types of new tourism activities also require new investment and also the involvement of the private sector. So it is another opportunity for the private sector, so that can be important for their decision-making processes. And also we during the pandemic now the public sector and also the big institutions or the big players in the tourism sector realize the importance of having some uh, response plans and also professional guidance. So it is also important for the private sector, especially the service providers like the consultancy companies, like the advisory companies. Now the public and some, let's say, private institutions, hoteliers, tour operators are in need of this kind of services. So this is also another business opportunity for the private sector entities. And also during the pandemic, we have seen that there were a lot of new incentives, support programs of the governments to support the recovery efforts. So therefore, these, let's say, incentives or such as some financial support programs still continue. So this is also another important opportunity for the private sector because this type of, let's say, temporary tax exemptions could be helpful for some private sector companies to emerge. So therefore, it is an important period of time that they can check out all these available opportunities in the domain of tourism, especially in the wake of pandemic. And finally, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think the pandemic has highlighted the role and importance of the private sector for economic growth and development, especially in the tourism sector, because the governments did their best take the lead to trigger the economic growth and support the recovery efforts in the tourism sector. And therefore, I think the government side, the public officials are more aware of the important role played by the private sector, and which is also very important for the private sector because this can be give a positive momentum in the discussions with different public stakeholders. So this is the end of my reply. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your time and for your clear and concise answers to my questions. We are now moving forward to the second segment of this webinar, which is realizing the importance of digital economy in developing as well as the least developed states. Another most stressed topic at the international forums is digital economy. Digital technologies are at the forefront of development and provide a unique opportunity for countries to accelerate economic growth. The OECD defines the concept of digital economy as the digital transformation of economic and social development. Having that being highlighted, we still witness a huge digital divide between the developed and the least developed countries. To highlight the solution to curb the digital divide, I would like to direct my questions to Dr. Atsuko Okuda. Hello, Ms. Atsuko, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you? Thank you for inviting me to this very important forum.
I'm good, Alhamdulillah. We're pleased to have you on board as well. Um, so, Mr. Dr. Atsuko, my first question to you is how does digital economy contribute in countries' objectives of economic growth?
Thank you for this very important question. I believe that we have seen the actual case due to COVID lockdowns very recently, that there are many significant ways through which the digital economy contribute to the real economy. If you recall, we could sustain many essential socio-economic functions due to digital technology and connectivity platforms, including e-commerce and e-health, as well as e-learning, and the government services being provided all on digital platforms. And this whole functions of now being increasingly digital has really sustained and expanded not only the economic part, but the social part. And I believe that we are all fully aware of how important this has been. Now, in terms of the concrete ways through which the digital economy contributes, is number one, the employment. I'm sure that you have heard all the term digital nomad or gig economy, where individual experts or consultants or workers can work anywhere regardless of the time zone or location, to find a job online and to work for someone in a faraway place. And this has, of course, some positive side and less positive side, but this provided an opportunity for someone in remote communities, rural areas, to look for employment opportunities. And some of the good examples of such independent digital assignment, so to speak, is, for example, a programmer who can work away from the office, or editors who can edit documents independently without an office space, or designers or composers who doesn't require physical presence. So there is a huge uptake and a change in terms of how we relate to the workplace and employment modality. And two, there are more different types of e-commerce companies or e-businesses. And we see some interesting examples of tourism, as the previous speaker was emphasizing. So now we have different types of services online to look for not only the hotels and the attractions, but also to share accommodations or means, or have different types of interactions through tourism. And more importantly, the advanced countries have introduced industrial internet, which uses, for example, 5G technologies and super fast broadband, to use it for simulating the product development or service delivery. So these are creating more efficiency and faster and deeper engagement with buyers and sellers, and to create different types of products and services as we speak. So I am happy to give concrete examples of what that means to developing countries or least developed countries, and how some of our member countries in Asia and the Pacific are coping with it.
Thank you, Doctor. Um, with that being, of course, established, what I would like to really focus on what are some of the reasons for the digital divide between the developed and the developing countries. What are the factors that has maintained this gap even in this era of digitization?
Thank you. It's a very important question. Let me start with the numbers first. In ITU, we collect and publish the ICT statistics, and what we found very recently was very amazing. Because of the COVID, we saw a significant unparalleled increase in the number of internet users between 2019 to 2021. 800 million people joined the cyberspace, perhaps for the first time. So we haven't seen any of such a huge increase within such a short period of time. But the downside of that is that we still have 2.7 billion people offline globally, and the majority of them, more than 95% of unconnected people, reside in developing countries. So there is a high concentration of people who don't have access to the digital technology as well as the opportunities provided by digital technology. Now, very recently, we also published a report on how that figure looks like from a least developed country perspective. And the number is even more stark, that even half of the people in developing countries have access to the internet, around 33%. So there is a huge divide, persistent one, between developing countries, especially least developed countries, and the other economies in terms of the actual access, for example, to the internet or mobile phone or broadband services. But over and above that, there are more additional factors affecting the digital divide, which is the devices. What we learned during the COVID lockdown was that many social services transitioned to digital platforms such as e-learning. And we assume that once the household is connected, all the children in that household should be able to access the e-learning platforms. But that wasn't the case. Perhaps there's one mobile phone which is used by a parent, and there are 3 children without devices. So it doesn't matter if that household is connected or not, as far as the children don't have devices or access to the internet. So there was outcry, so to speak, in some of the countries where children couldn't really benefit from the huge opportunities from the digital platforms. But additionally, not only the devices or actual access, but the skills and awareness was found extremely important, because not everyone, especially people with disabilities or older generations, don't know how to securely and safely conduct the transactions. And that is preventing us from rolling out and connect in a meaningful way as many people as possible to reduce the number of 2.7 billion people. So there are many factors that influence the access or lack of access, especially among developing countries and least developed countries. And these are the topics that we are working on in Asia and the Pacific and beyond.
Thank you, Doctor. And I think we cannot conclude this entire discussion without highlighting the ITU's initiatives and contributions to address this inequality of technology in some countries. So if you can highlight what ITU is doing and where we are at right now. Thank you.
Thank you. So some of the groups which are at disadvantage in the whole digital divide context are women and young girls and young women. And in some countries or in some regions, that is more accentuated. The number or gap between the male and female internet users is more stark. For us, in order to address the divides, we have several programs to emphasize and to encourage more girls and young women to be involved and exposed to all digital. So if I can give an example, and this is very timely that I can share this information with you today. We at ITU celebrate Girls in ICT Day every Thursday, every fourth Thursday of April every year. So it happens only once a year. And we encourage girls and young women to participate in our event, which is conducted with partners, to know some of the technologies as well as applications and topics that could be useful for them to engage in cyberspace. For example, every year we organize Girls in ICT Day starting from Thailand, and we organized about 10 such celebrations all across Asia and the Pacific. And what it does is that we organize an online and offline courses of different topics. For example, the AI fundamentals, e-agriculture, e-commerce, and cybersecurity and safety, working with different partners. And some of the participants are particularly interested in, for example, AI, and they may decide to pursue AI or ICT as an academic career. And a concrete example of that is that we have a few alumni who attended our past events, and they were so inspired by the speeches and the training, they became an entrepreneur. And some of them came back and shared with us the experience of why they started a company to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have different mechanisms. We also conduct research and analysis to really pinpoint where the specific gaps are in certain contexts, as well as organize more systematic and comprehensive capacity development. But for us, because it's April already, and this year we celebrated on 27th of April, we really encourage the viewers as well as the potential partners, private sector companies, to join us and to share the capacity development, awareness sessions, and what you could do to work with us. And in fact, we are working with some of the members of Chamber of Commerce to partner with us in some of the Girls in ICT Day celebrations. So this is very exciting for us. This is not something that one agency can do. I think all of us have different strengths and expertise and networks. And this is something I believe we can really benefit from each other's expertise. So thank you, Ms. Samra, back to you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. So we really acknowledge the efforts of ITU towards the ICT specifically girls in the Asian Pacific region. And thank you so much, Dr. Session of this webinar, and it is regarding the policy making at the national and international levels. In this segment, we would like to learn about the available platforms for policy making at the national and international levels. I will direct my questions to both the panelists, Dr. Asuko, and speakers to please limit your answers to 2 minutes each. Thank you. Dr. Jen, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Semra, for the question and for this chance. Let me start by some international forums that are important for policy making in the domain of tourism. As you know, in the United Nations system, UNWTO based in Spain is responsible for the tracking and monitoring the developments in the area of tourism. And UNWTO has recently also started regional office in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, which is a member of the OIC. So I think this will also pave the way for more increased cooperation with the OIC as well. And also, we have some, let's say, regional organizations uh, which are also covering the member states of the OIC, like in the Africa, we have the African Union, and in Asia, we have the ASEAN, etc. So therefore, there are some also regional organizations which have some specific mandated task groups for the development of tourism, and especially since the beginning of the pandemic, these regional organizations also develop some strategies for the member states how to recover and how to support the recovery efforts of the member states. Now, I would like to come to the point of specifically the OIC related decision making or policy bodies which have some say and some resolutions on the development of tourism, especially the ICTM, as I mentioned, the Tourism Ministerial Conference of the OIC, which is the highest level forum, which brings the ministers of responsible for tourism from the OIC member states every 2 years to discuss the developments in the area of tourism. And another one is the COMSEC annual meetings, which is being held every year in Istanbul, in Turkey. And the other one is the Council of Foreign Ministers meeting, which is being held also annually. Just few weeks ago, it was held in Mauritania, and it adopted a number of resolutions for the development of tourism. So therefore, these resolutions don't come in isolation. They are also reflecting the recent change, such as the COVID pandemic, and how it is affecting the member states' tourism activities, and what should be done to support these recovery efforts. So these are some of the international or OIC level decision-making bodies and political platforms. In addition to that, also I would like to emphasize the CESRIC activities, especially when it comes to the capacity building programs and training activities. We pay special attention to the views of the member states during our activities. We usually devote a session to listen the experiences of the member states in policy making in tourism, or such as to support the recovery efforts in COVID-19 in the domain of tourism. So therefore, the main idea of this kind of sessions is first to raise awareness and to also to support the intra-OIC cooperation, especially in the domain of tourism. So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to, share the good experiences of the member states with others, so therefore they can benefit from each other's expertise and experience, such as the Malaysia has developed one response package for the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Gambia can also benefit from this experience. So what we are trying to do is that trying to match the experiences of these two countries, where one country has a more advanced tourism sector and the other can also benefit from this experience. So this is the main idea of having this kind of sessions in our activities. So this is the response that I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jem. Dr. Atsuko, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much. And this is a very important topic. And for the area of ICT, we have several layers where such discussions are taking place. And at ITU, we have a highest level of a body, which is called Plenipotentiary Conference, that outlays set the framework for future digital development, which took place very recently in October last year. But more importantly, there are regulatory and policy discussions which are taking place within the region, because there are many things that we can learn from each other. And of course, nationally, what is perhaps most significant as we speak is the fact that many sectors, different socioeconomic sectors, are trying to collaborate and work together to create synergies. And as you can imagine, digital is not a standalone sector alone. It needs and it can create more values by working together with others, such as businesses or commerce or agriculture or logistics. So we are encouraging and we are encouraged by these new trends where the government, different line ministries are talking to each other, working together, and similar developments are happening within the private sector where new products and services emerge from such collaboration. So I hope that these three layers of decision making, policy making, or discussions are all in sync and moving us forward to a more inclusive digital transformation. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contribution. Last but not the least, I would like to invite Mr. Badil Dada from ICCIA. He is Director Events and Management to give an overview of ICCIA's vision of enabling economic growth through private sector development. Mr. Badi, you have the floor.
Good evening and good morning. Thank you a lot for being here with you. Actually, I want to complete from what Dr. Okada was mentioning about synchronizing and harmonizing the activities, and based with what also Dr. Tintin has been raised. From us as a private sector, as has been mentioned at the beginning, it's the enablers and the mobilizers for the economic and how we can recover back the economic within the countries, especially after the pandemic. And definitely when we move forward in that direction and how we are going to enable this economy, you are based on the studies that has been raised by the colleagues also, and how the important, especially the tourism sector, we are working on it now in the field. And when we see it in the private sector in certain countries, we can see that the tourism is the force contributor for the economic growth in the country itself. After if we speaking about very natural resources countries, the fuel, the chemicals, and the food, tourism can be the force enablers and the force economic growth in the country. In a practical wise, how we bring this into action, actually, within ICCIA, we try to have some activities related to our tourism industry, let's say in general, but this cannot be done away from inclusive all what has been mentioned, especially when we're speaking about digital economy, when we are speaking about capacity building of the people and of the employee and all the HR resources that could be contributed in that activity, because it's complementary approach. We cannot move forward without having this on board with us. And what has also mentioned from Dr. Okeda before about the inclusive of other segments of people and population, which they are not integrated too much at the beginning with the digital economy. And we see what pandemic has been a change on the mentality, and they create a lot of distance and online workshops and online activities and online jobs for the new people, inclusive meaning all everything. So that's why in ICCIA we are developing the Sustainable Tourism Forum, and we focus on sustainability because we want to also don't forget the issues regarding the environment, especially when we are speaking about the new trends of tourism, the ecotourism, the blue tourism, and all these sites, which is very valuable now in the economic and in the heritage of the country itself to reserve it. So the sustainable tourism, it's our new focus and new projects working in. Definitely, inshallah, will be including collaboration with CICCIA, for example, about all the information and the capacity building, because during that forums, definitely we will have a side workshops also to be able to make the capacity building for the enterprises, also people on board with us, to highlight what kind of new trends, what kind of new technology has been included and has been identified within the new industry in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Badi, for such an extensive explanation of ICCIA's initiative in the industries. With this, we have concluded our first webinar of ICCIA and International Voices. I'm grateful to our speakers for their time and insightful contributions to the webinar. And we hope to work together.
I would like to thank you, the ICCIA and the colleagues at the ICCIA, for this kind invitation, and also for Dr. Asuka for her insightful presentation and intervention. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And we hope to work together in the future for the development of the private sector altogether. I would also like to use this opportunity to thank my team at ICCIA who contributed in making this webinar happen. On this note, we are signing out. This is Samra Qureshi. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Samra.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Be on board, and inshallah, looking to meet soon. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.